I'm Alexa, and you're listening to my mommy.
You are tuned in to The Nancy Ruffin Show, a digital global classroom where individuals across all ages, backgrounds, and career levels tune in for guidance and motivation to live life on their own terms. Hosted by award-winning author, transformation coach, and the self-proclaimed Latina Oprah, The Nancy Ruffin Show is where inspiring thought leaders, modern-day influencers, and social game changers come to discuss their own personal journeys and have real conversations about the journey to success. It's where the next generation of leaders come to tap into their potential, ignite their fire, and expand their self-awareness. So if you're ready to power up and blaze trails of positive change, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome back. It's your girl, Nancy Ruffin, the one and only purpose professional, aka Latina Oprah. I am so happy to be back, guys. You know, I've taken a bit of a hiatus for the summer because I just really needed a break. I needed to just refocus and reset some of my priorities. I think the last time I had a show, not sure if I brought you guys up to date, but there was a lot of things happening with me health-wise, and I really had to just get my head straight and just really focus on what's important. And this is something that I tell you guys all the time. You can't work yourself to death. Yet, that was exactly what I was doing. I was doing so much, too much, and not taking a break. And, when we do that, right, and when we don't give ourselves breaks, our bodies force us into a break period. And that was what happened to me. Back in May, I had I had a breast cancer scare. And I think that I've mentioned this definitely on my Instagram stories. I really went into what that process had been like for me for that entire month of May, and the constant back and forth to the doctor, the many mammograms that I had to have 2 biopsies, and all to come up with a diagnosis that the mass that was discovered in my breast is non-cancerous. Thank God. Hallelujah. But I will tell you that for that entire month, it was very scary, just not knowing. And the doctor pretty much telling me, she kept saying, I don't like the way it looks. I don't like the way it looks. And she's like, we don't want to jump to any conclusions, but either way, whether it's cancerous or not, we're going to have it removed. And so while I am grateful that it's not cancer, I still have to undergo breast surgery to have the mass removed. So that is where I am right now in that process. I actually have an appointment with the breast surgeon this week. They're going to review all of my medical records. So they're going to review all of the images from the mammograms that I had. They're going to look at the slides, the pathology slides from the biopsies that I had. They'll review the report from the radiologist, so they're going to go through all of this, and then to ultimately decide on when I'm going to have this surgery. Now, I will tell you that I am scared as hell for surgery. And I'm sure that, for breast surgeons, it's probably routine. But what people don't realize is that whenever you have any kind of surgery, whenever you have to go under anesthesia, there's a risk that you can die. And so I'm not trying to focus on that. I'm trying to remain positive. And of course, I put it all in God's hands, and I know that whatever is His will is what's going to pass. But I'm human, and it's in my humanity that the fears are very real. And so this is kind of where I am, not trying to think about it, but in the back of my head thinking about it and just praying for the best. But in any case, because of all of that I was going through, and because my focus wasn't on anything other than my health, I really wasn't able to, record podcast episodes. I really wasn't, in the space to conduct interviews with anyone. And I really was taking that moment to just grow deeper in my relationship with God and really refocus and kind of put the lens on myself for a little bit, because I needed to make sure that I was good, that I was taking care of me first. So, this is kind of a perfect segue, because in that process of me really stepping more into my faith and developing or trying to get closer to God, for those of you who have been listening to the show for the past year or so, and if you've been connected with me on social media, then I think it's been very clear that I have grown in my faith. I'm even more vocal now in talking about God, and I've always kind of talked about Him whenever I've mentioned my story and the things that I have gone through and the things that I've overcome. But I think it's been even more so recently, because, man, I will tell you that had it not been for God, I would not be where I am in my life. Period. God has been the overarching presence in everything that has manifested for me. And so in that process, the next step for me in my faith was to make that real commitment, to follow God. And I've always been a Jesus follower. But you know what happens, right? Life happens. And somewhere along the journey, we turn away from God and we think that our way is the best way. And so we don't walk with God in the way that we should. And oftentimes we only turn to God when we find ourselves at the lowest of lows. And when things are going bad for us, that's when we turn to God. That's when we want Him to be there for us. That's when we want Him to answer our prayers, right? But then when things are great, we somehow forget that it was God that got us there. And so I didn't want to continue in that way. I wanted to make a real commitment, to the Lord, to rejoice in the good times and to rejoice in Him in the not so good times, with the understanding that everything that happens in my life, whether I believe that it's good or not, is in the greater good of my life. And so I got baptized. In June. So I am pretty much a baby, right, in this new journey with God. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what that meant to me and some of the things that I had been thinking about up until my baptism. Because for me, when I think about born again or being born again or committing your life to the Lord, I used to think that it came with so much responsibility. I used to think that I had to completely change who I was to be born again, to follow Christ. And I want to kind of demystify some of that myth, for any of you who might be struggling, who might be on the brink or trying to make that decision and not really sure what it means. I want to share what it meant to me, and hopefully it'll help you on your own journey. So we're going to talk about that once we get back from the break. And I also want to talk about on this episode the recent historic moment that has been happening on my island of Puerto Rico, how our people mobilized, to take back control of their government and oust the corrupt governor, Ricardo Rosello. I want to talk about how I've been active in some of these protest movements, what has inspired me to get involved and use my voice in this way. So we're going to talk about all of this when we get back. So stay tuned. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was first trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had so many questions. Like, how do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all of the apps people like to listen to? And how do I make money from my podcast? And the answer to every one of these questions was super simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and super easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast, which means that you can get paid to podcast right away. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, then head over to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. I can't wait to hear your podcast.
You are now listening to the one and only Nancy Ruffin.
Welcome back. It is the Nancy Ruffin Show, and this is, I think, my first summer episode. I've been taking a break. I hope you guys have been taking a break as well. I hope you've been enjoying these summer months, even though I know many of us still have to work during the summer. I want you to make sure that on the weekends or during your time off, that you're at least taking time to soak up the sun, go out in nature, just take a walk, stay in awe of the trees, the birds, like really be one with nature. It's a different experience when you just go out and enjoy or appreciate the nature around you than when you're rushing to and from work and not really paying attention to all of the beauty that is right within our fingertips. This is something that I've been paying more attention to, especially because I've kind of ramped up my meditation. It was something that I had been slacking in for a little bit, but I always find that when I meditate, it really helps to ground me. It really helps to center me and really bring me back into myself, and into that alignment with God. But in any case, I want to thank you for sticking with me. I know that it's tough when you're so used to a show putting out content week after week, and then they kind of leave you hanging, right? And then come Monday morning, there isn't a new episode, and this has become part of your routine. So forgive me, but it wasn't you, it was me. And for those of you who might be new to the show, welcome. Thank you for being here. Don't know how you found me, but I am grateful that you are here. And now that you are here, I am going to ask you to make sure that you click that subscribe button, because what it does is that as soon as a new episode drops, it sends you a notification. Also, if you listen to the show, if you love it, if you enjoy it, if it has touched you in any way, I do love the DMs that you guys send me. I love the emails that you sent me. But if you can just copy and paste those comments into the comment section of the podcast, that would really be so appreciated, because we live in a world of numbers and algorithms. And unfortunately, as it relates to the podcast space, numbers matter, numbers count. And so whenever you guys leave a rating, whenever you leave a comment, what that does is that it pushes my podcast up higher. It makes it more visible to others who might be searching, to listen to something new and something fresh, something inspiring. So just know that your rating, your comment is really helping me. And to those of you who have already left comments, who have left numerous comments and have left me the 5-star ratings, thank you so much, guys. It doesn't go unnoticed. I appreciate you guys so much. And I just want to let you know that. I want you to know that you guys are important to me. So with that said, let's get into the topic for this week. I want to talk about my baptism, what that felt like, the actual act of being dunked in a tub of water. let me tell you that I thought I was going to drown. Okay. Like they dunk you in that water. It ain't like a little dunk. No, they dunk that head all the way down and they bring you back up. But it's like, I was like in shock. And I think because I didn't expect to be dunked so hard that it caught me off guard. But I will tell you that it was such an emotional experience for me. It really is spiritual, because it's like the minute they dunk you in that water, every sin that you ever committed gets washed away in that water. And the minute they pull you back up, you rise as this new person with a clean slate, brand new, just, ready to start over in your journey and your commitment to God. And it really had me thinking this concept of starting over and this concept of second chances, right? Because that's really for me, that's what baptism signified. It is God giving me a second chance to put him first and to make it right. And how often in other relationships, right? Maybe romantic relationships, maybe in relationships with our friends or our families, we screw up or they screw up, and how difficult it is to give or get those second chances, right? When it's humans, when it's us, we are so inclined to not give a second chance, right? Because we're trying to protect ourselves. We don't want to get hurt. And yet we serve a God that the minute we ask for forgiveness, the minute that we ask for a second chance, he is more than happy to do that for us. He's almost waiting for us with open arms to give us the second chance. We don't have to beg him. We don't have to plead. We don't have to lay our case out in front of him, for him to give us the second chance. It's just there. It's waiting for us to make that decision that we want a second chance. And for me, that was what that was like. And the minute that I, rose from that water, I really felt like a new person, and not a new person in the sense that I'm going to change. I don't even know how to explain it, because I'm still the same person, but then I'm not. And I guess the best way for me to clarify that is that I am no longer living a life that is centered on me. So my decisions are no longer really based on what Nancy wants. I am not acting on impulse. I'm not acting on what might make me feel good, right? At the moment, I'm thinking about God first. And I'm asking myself, would this please God? If I did this, would he be pleased with me? And it's almost, I find myself really thinking twice about the things that I'm doing. Whereas before, I would just do what I wanted, regardless of the consequences, regardless of who would get hurt as a result of my actions. It was really all about me, me, me. And now it's all about God, God, God. And so I haven't changed in my everyday behavior, but there are things, that I think twice about. I'm going to church every Sunday, right? Whether I like it or not. And for me, I do like it. I love going to church every Sunday. And so before, where it used to feel like an obligation or a burden or something that I had to do, it's become something that I enjoy doing. I love to go to church, not because that's the only place that I can be with God or the only place that I can worship him, but because it's the only place that I can be in community and fellowship with other people worshiping him. And there's something to be said about being surrounded by people who get it, by people who love God as much as I do. And that's why I enjoy going to church. And as I walk on this new path, I still do the things that I used to do. Like I still get together with my girlfriends. We still crack jokes. I still have my glass of wine or my glass of sangria. So it's not like I have, to give up the things that I enjoy. But what I'm not doing is like getting pissy drunk, where I lose all concept of what I'm doing, which is what I used to do, before. I mean, I haven't done that in a really long time, but when I was living just for myself, for me, it was like, well, it was about how drunk can I get, right? Like the drunker I got in my mind, I equated that with the more fun I would have. And in hindsight, of course, it's stupid and it's foolish because, I would get really stupid drunk and then the next day I would feel like crap and I would be sick. And, and it really wasn't worth it, in hindsight. But like, I still do the things that I enjoy. I just make sure that when I'm doing them, I'm thinking about, well, would this be okay with God? And if in my heart I feel that it is, I do it. And if I don't feel that it is, I don't. And then, I always have the Bible and I turn to the Bible whenever I'm confused and I'm not sure. But I will tell you that I feel so good. And it's not an easy journey, right? I don't want to sit up here and make it seem like it's easy, because it's not, because it's like I said, like I'm no longer living my life for myself. I'm living my life for Jesus, and everything that I do now, I'm talking to him about. And, I want to know if the path that I'm on is the path that he has set for me, because sometimes we could get confused and we can think that we're on the right path, but we're really not. And so for me, part of this journey is allowing myself to really learn how to listen to God when he speaks. And that happens to me. For me, that happens a number of ways. It happens through social media posts, because that's what I pay attention to. It happens through conversations with friends, and they're not just any friends, but God-fearing friends, people that have my best interest at heart, who are not afraid to tell me, like, you're really going on the wrong path. Those people are important to have in your life. The yes people, I don't have yes people in my life, thank God, because I don't need a person to tell me yes. I need a person to tell me when I'm screwing up and to yank me by the neck and be like, what the heck are you doing? And if they see me about to jump off of a bridge, I don't want them to just stand there and watch me jump, because they think that that's what being a good loyal friend is. No, a good loyal friend is the friend that pulls you back and says, what the hell are you doing? And saves you from yourself sometimes. And so I don't know where you guys are on your own faith journey, but I will tell you that committing your life to Jesus doesn't mean that it has to be a complete 180 in the things that you do. And I had lunch a couple of weeks ago with a friend, and she said something that was so powerful to me, or for me, but about her own journey and when she decided to follow Christ, because she had the same questions. And she said that a friend told her that it's not about needing to change, right? But that in that journey, God will change you, right? So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to worry about changing. God will start changing you. And you'll start to see that in the way that you behave, in the way that you speak, in the people that you allow yourself to be surrounded by. God is going to change you. You don't have to change a thing. And so when she said that to me, I swear it really put me at ease, because it took the burden off of my shoulders of trying to understand what being a born-again Christian meant. For me, it means just following God, reading the Word, surrounding myself by like-minded people, and then allowing God to change me. So that's the same thing that I would tell you. If you're on this journey, don't worry so much about the things you need to stop doing or you need to change about yourself, but just focus on God, focus on that work, and God will change you. So enough of the baptism talk. I really want to talk about what's happening in Puerto Rico, because I will tell you, I have not seen a movement like this in my entire lifetime. And for those of you who may not be familiar with what's happening, on the island, Puerto Rico has been plagued by a corrupt government for a very long time. Right, very long time. A part of that has to do with its colonial status. Puerto Rico is a U.S. colony. We are a commonwealth, and so we are not allowed to vote for the president. Yet the president makes the decisions that govern the island. And so what's been happening on the island as of recently is that the governor, Ricardo Rosselló, there was a leak, a chat leak between him and his cronies, other government officials, where they were making homophobic, misogynistic, insensitive comments about other members of the government, about politicians here in the States. They were making fun of the dead bodies of the hurricane victims from Hurricane Maria. I mean, it was horrible, and all you have to do is a Google search about Ricardo Rosselló, and you can see, you can find, the chats. It was 889 pages of text messages that went on for a number of months. And so the Center for Investigative Journalism, I believe, in Puerto Rico, discovered this, through their investigation, and they're the ones that kind of put the chat out there. And as a result of that, the people of the island weren't having it anymore, and they protested for 12 straight days, and this impact was so huge because you had people in Puerto Rico protesting, and then you had people in the diaspora all over the United States, Puerto Ricans in the United States protesting. And the power of the people really is what took this governor out. And I will tell you that this man did not want to resign, okay, because they were protesting day after day after day right in front of the governor's mansion in San Juan, and he stood firm in his decision that he was not resigning. But what happened was that as these protests continued on, and they kept going for days and days and days, and the people said that they were going to protest. It didn't matter how long it took until he resigned. They weren't going to stop. And so that kind of pressure forced other government officials in Puerto Rico to pretty much turn their backs on Ricardo Rosselló. So he lost the support of his political party. He lost the support of all of the mayors and all of the municipalities in Puerto Rico. Nobody was supporting him. There were all of the top people in his administration had resigned. There in effect is no real government right now in Puerto Rico because all of these positions are empty. People have resigned and they have turned his back on him. And so I guess the last straw was that they had said that he either resigned, and if he didn't resign, that they were going to start impeachment proceedings. And so earlier this week, I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday, at about 11:30 p.m., he went on national TV and he gave his resignation statement. I was in my living room, glued to my cell phone, because I was watching David Begnald's coverage. He's been on the front lines in Puerto Rico, really reporting the story directly from the street. And from 5 o'clock that evening, Rosselló was supposed to come out and give a statement, but he didn't come out till 11:30 at night. And as I'm sitting in my living room, listening to him go on and on and on about all of the accomplishments that he's had while he's been in office, I'm like, dude, nobody cares. Like, we don't care. We want to know, are you staying or are you going? And when he finally said that he was resigning, I felt an overwhelming emotion. Like, I was started to tear. I was so happy and so excited for the people who had really been on the front lines in Puerto Rico day after day, being attacked with tear gas, with rubber bullets, and all of the things that they were enduring because they were not going to allow this man to continue in power. His administration, right before he resigned, his head of education and someone else, I can't remember, but two of his top officials had got arrested for corruption and misappropriation of federal funds and for awarding contracts to like their friends, and just as a whole mess. And the people of Puerto Rico had enough, and they were out there protesting because they were committed to getting this man out. And so they did. And I will tell you that as a member of the diaspora in New York, there are a number of groups here on the front lines that are doing amazing work, in fighting not just the corruption that's happening in the government, in Puerto Rico, but fighting what's happening here, in our U.S. courts with the appointment of the Fiscal Control Board as a result of the Promesa Act that was passed in 2016. It was passed by Congress and it was signed into law by President Obama. And what this board does is that it gives them full control of Puerto Rico's finances and puts them in charge of restructuring the debt. So they make all of the financial decisions for the island. It's a 7-member board of individuals who have no real vested interest in the island. None of them live in Puerto Rico. And then the one person who does, that was appointed to the board, was appointed by Rosello. It's his right-hand man. I forgot his name. It's Elias. I think it's Elias Sanchez. But even with that, he doesn't have any voting rights. So he's just, he's just someone who sits on the board. And I'm not really sure what he does, but he can't vote on anything. So there's no one that's representing the true voice of the people. And what this Fiscal Control Board is doing is it's putting the interest of the hedge funds and Wall Street and all of these corporations, that bought these no good bonds first. So they're more concerned with getting these people their money back more than they are in rebuilding the island, right? And so they've closed over 400 schools since they've been there, since they've been in control. They've cut back on healthcare services. They have cut back on other essential services on the island, and they are starting to sell off parts of the island to private investors and corporations. They're selling our beaches, and they're pretty much selling the land. They're selling the island to whoever has deep enough pockets to pay for it. And that does a huge injustice to the people of the island. And so I share all that to say, because I wanted to say that there's groups here in New York who are fighting against that. They're attending, all of these hearings, down by the courthouses, by Pearl Street, and in the court area in downtown Manhattan. So I want to give a shout out to the New York Boricua resistance movement, also El Frente PR. You can find them on Instagram. Brooklyn Storm, Power Malu, all of these individuals and organizations, they are on the front lines leading this movement. They are passionate and committed to seeing a free and independent, Puerto Rico. They have a number of rallies, events, protests almost weekly in New York City. And I just recently got connected with this group of people. I had been to protests in the past, but I guess I just wasn't aware of who was responsible for putting these things together. And so I finally got connected with the organizers. And I will tell you that since then, I have really focused more, just on educating myself on what's happening on the island, because it's important to know what we're fighting against. I think that when it came to Rosello, there was such a huge mobilization and people were involved because they saw firsthand what he was doing. The leak of, the chat put things in black and white for people to understand, just how corrupt he really was. And I think that we, especially in the diaspora, we have to do the same thing. We have to educate ourselves, because a lot of times we don't know about what's happening because, for one, they're not reporting this, on the news here. And it's our responsibility to get educated, because, I know for me, I've never lived on the island, but I have plenty of family who live in Puerto Rico. I have plenty of family who are being affected by the decisions that this Fiscal Control Board is making for the people on the island. And the greatest way to keep a group of people down is you keep them uneducated and you keep them sick. Okay, by them closing down schools, by them cutting down healthcare services, what that says to me is that the people of Puerto Rico are not important enough to save. They're just not worth it. So instead, they will allocate those funds to pay back these already rich corporations here on Wall Street. Let the people suffer as long as these hedge funds, get their money and they can they can line their pockets at the expense of the island. And this is something that I'm passionate about, because as you guys know, I'm all about doing what's right, and what's happening in Puerto Rico is not right. A part of that has to do with our our status as a colony, and the fact that even now the United States does not see Puerto Rico as a real part of the United States. They don't view us as U.S. citizens, which is why they treat us as less than. And if you really want to learn about some of the atrocities that this government has done, to the Puerto Rican people, Google the Ponce massacre, Google the sterilization of Puerto Rican women, Google Pedro Albizu Campos and how they used him as a guinea pig for radiation experiments. Okay, they've done so many horrible things to our island and to our people. Google Vieques and how they had used that as a bombing ground, like to test bombs, and just horrible things that they've done because they can, because they pretty much own us, they control us, and we're their property, and the people who live on the island don't matter to them. And so I need every Puerto Rican here to get as outraged as the Boricuas on the island did. And we need to show up to every protest, to every rally, to every hearing, of the Fiscal Control Board. And if you don't know when it's happening, like I said, connect yourself to Brooklyn Storm, connect yourself to Paro Malu, connect yourself to NY Boricua Resistance on Instagram, El Frente PR. These are all organizations who are out there doing the work, and they are on the front lines. And for me, I rather be a part of history than just sit back and watch history create itself. Because as long as we have a voice, as long as we have a platform, we have a responsibility to humanity to stand up for what's right. So you don't even have to be Puerto Rican, but it's about doing what's right for the people of that island. Because I will tell you that if they're doing it to U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico, if they're doing it to U.S. citizens in Hawaii, because Hawaii has been having their own protest as well, because the government is looking or wants to install another telescope on a volcano in Hawaii that's considered sacred land. If they can do this in any area of the United States where there are indigenous people, where there are people of color, they can do it anywhere. And you don't want to sit back and wait until it happens closer to home to take action. We have a responsibility to take action now. Do what you can. And I get it. Everyone is not an activist. Everyone can't be on the front lines. I understand that. But what we can do is we can educate ourselves. And then when we educate ourselves, we educate other people. You share the knowledge. You spread what you're learning. You see that these rallies and these protests are happening. You might not be able to go, but share the information and encourage others to go, encourage others to use their voice, to use their platform, to just share awareness. The more people know, the more they're inclined to get involved. So with that, mi gente, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Nancy Ruffin Show. I am grateful for you. Have an amazing week. And remember, go out there and crush those goals.
Thank you for listening to The Nancy Ruffin Show.